Great. Welcome to tonight's extended learning call on able accounts. And Vicky has become our resident expert at Family Voices on able accounts, and we're so appreciative of everything Vicky does for us. And I know that you all will learn a great deal from Vicky. Oh, I'm not even on camera, so you can even see who I am. Oh, and it's dark, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, um, we're happy that Vicky is able to provide this service for consumers across the state. And I always learn something new every time I listen to Vicky on guardianships or able, or just she's just a very knowledgeable woman. So um, I hope that you will all enjoy tonight's call. So Vicky, go ahead and take it away. And if people come in, I'll let them
Okay,
in.
let's see if I can get this to go. Okay, can you see
Yeah,
screen,
Yep.
everybody? Okay.
looks
All right.
good.
So we'll just get started here. So first I want to talk about a disclosure statement that we have. So the information in this presentation is for general informational purposes only. I don't offer legal advice or any accounting advice on this, or neither I nor Family Voices is a substitute for this. And then that Family Voices of North Dakota is the Family to Family Health Information Center in North Dakota, which is a 501c nonprofit. Okay. So get started here. I will stop periodically, so if you have questions, you can answer. You can ask them then, so you don't have to wait till the end of the presentation. So how ABLE accounts began was the Stephen Beck Jr. Achieving a Better Life Experience Act, and this became law on December 19th, 2014. The law aims to ease financial strains faced by individuals with disabilities by making tax-free savings accounts available to cover qualified disability expenses. These accounts can be created by individuals to support themselves or by families to support their dependents. And on April 1st, 2015, the North Dakota governor signed into law House Bill 1373. House Bill 1373 gives the Bank of North Dakota the ability and the opportunity to implement an ABLE account and to issue its rules. North Dakota has chosen to offer resources only to help those wishing to open a 529 ABLE account. And every so often I get quite a few calls saying, hey, have we ever tried to get ABLE accounts into North Dakota again? We tried for 2 sessions, and really, we didn't get very far with that. The Bank of North Dakota just really has chosen not to do that. So for the last couple of sessions, we just really haven't looked at trying to advocate to get the Bank of North Dakota to open one. But, certainly, we're one of the last states that does not have their own ABLE accounts in their states. But what is nice is most of the states offer for other residents in other states to open them as well. Okay. So what is an ABLE account? These are established under what we call the Section 529 ABLE, which qualifies for a preferred federal tax treatment. So like college save accounts, this is very similar to that, where what is in the account is not taxable. It enables eligible individuals to save for disability-related expenses. If assets in and distributes for qualified disability expenses are disregarded, or they're given that special treatment, determining federal means tested programs and state means tested programs. And we'll talk about those in a little bit. Total annual contributions. Oops, this didn't get changed. Yeah, it did. Total annual contributions may not exceed the federal gift tax, which for 2026 is $20,000. Typically, that goes up $1,000 each year. So you can expect in 2027, it'll be $21,000. The designated beneficiary is the account holder, and any left assets of the account left at death is subject to a Medicaid clawback or payback, whichever term you like to use. but not in all states. Even though you may open an ABLE account, let's say in Virginia, it is the state laws that you have to go by. So in North Dakota, there is that Medicaid clawback. In other states, there has been in the last few years some legislation to remove that clawback. And then also in some other states, they have incentives if you are a resident of that state. Okay. So let's go to eligibility. And one of these eligibility requirements has just changed recently, and that's the first one, which is the age requirement. You must be disabled before the age of 46. This used to be 26. So that has been a good change for folks. And the other is you must be determined disabled. So how is one determined disabled? The individual is determined to meet the qualifications for SSI or SSDI. And you do not need to be receiving the income for this. You just need to be termed disabled according to the Social Security criteria. Or if you don't meet those, you must have a disability certificate. And so we'll talk about that on the next slide. Okay, so disability determination, as I said, you must meet the Social Security requirements for that, and I have listed those here, which is to be medically determined physical or mental impairment that results in marked and severe functional limitations. And those are, number one, can be expected to result in death or has lasted or can be expected to last for a continuous period of not less than 12 months, or you're blind and such blindness or disability occurred before the date on which the individual attained the age of 46. So the other disability determination could be a disability certificate. So this would be a copy of the individual or the assigned beneficiary of that ABLE account, the diagnosis assessment used to make their diagnosis by the physician who did that, and the tools or the criteria that they did. So more or less like the DSM-5 might be used just to prove the diagnosis in there. And then to have that physician's contact, and preferably done on a letterhead so you have all that information. Typically, most ABLE accounts currently do not ask if you have a disability certificate, but you should keep it in a very safe place. You'll learn later on in this presentation, the IRS is the governing agency over this. And so that being the IRS, they could audit you at any time. And so you want to keep good records of what you're doing in the ABLE account, but also if you are using a disability certificate as the determination of a disability, just to make sure you keep that in a safe place. So any questions on eligibility so far? We'll just keep going. So I said early on, what the funds that are in an ABLE account have an impact on federal and state benefits. Okay, so some of these, the assets in an ABLE account will be disregarded for these programs. And it is disregarded for most federal means tested programs, and then again for some of the state benefit programs. So for Social Security income, so supplemental security income or Social Security disability insurance, so those are SSI or SSDI, you still must meet all the eligible criteria. Okay, so you can't hide money to become eligible for SSI or SSDI. Okay, you must meet their criteria, which again is that asset limit for an individual of $2,000. And all the rest of the Social Security criteria, okay? But what the account assets, the ABLE account assets will be disregarded until you reach the balance of $100,000. Okay, at $100,000 in an ABLE account, either the monies you're receiving for SSI or SSDI or both, it will be suspended until you spend down. Okay, so you won't have to reapply and determine your eligibility for Social Security anymore. You must just spend it down. And I recently learned, which I just didn't put it in here because a family had called me, of how much time do you have to spend that down after $100,000. So I did some calling and found out information. They give you only 30 days to spend that down. Okay, so there's no amount of time after that. And if you don't spend it down within the 100,000, you will no longer receive your payments, okay, until you reestablish. So that was something new for me as well. I did not know that. I just had a call on that. And so for Medicaid, we think of that too. An ABLE account assets are also disregarded for Medicaid. But again, you still must meet the requirements to be eligible for North Dakota Medicaid. Okay, it's just after you're eligible for Medicaid, what is in your ABLE account does not count as income or assets to you to Medicaid. And in North Dakota, the Medicaid income and assets rule is at $3,000. And then it's also disregarded what's in your ABLE account for some state benefit programs. And those include SPED, or the Service Payments to Elderly and Disabled, and expanded SPED, Aid to the Blind remedial care, the Substance Disorder voucher, long-term subsidy programs, special health care services, and basic care sesame program, and SNAP. Okay, and then off to the right there, you'll see in black, I have the North Dakota's policy number on those benefits where ABLE account assets are a disregard. Okay, and so we will go into what ABLE accounts can be used for, but I want to bring a little bit of special attention to housing because I've had more calls on this recently. So money in an ABLE account generally does not count towards the eligibility for federal housing programs like HUD, or including Section 8 and Section 202 and Section 811. There's different of the sections for that. Provided the funds are used for qualified disability expenses. Okay, so what can be affected by that is the timing rules. So to avoid being counting as a resource in subsequent months, funds withdrawn for housing must be paid within that same calendar month. Okay, so if you're going to use these as disability expenses for May, then it has to be paid in May. It cannot be paid in June, or doing May's and June's together in June. Okay, it has to happen during that month. And then there is a wage income exception. While the account itself is exempt, wages deposited directly into the ABLE account still count as income when determining eligibility. Okay, so if you have some money, let's say an example of this, you got money from someone to deposit into your ABLE account, but you put it into your Social Security checking account or savings account first, and then moved it into ABLE to pay for housing, whatever you moved in there is going to count as income. Okay, so anybody have questions on that wage income exception? That's a more difficult one sometimes to understand. Okay, we'll just keep moving. So contributions, who can contribute to an ABLE account? They can be made by the beneficiary or the account owner themselves, parents, caregivers, anyone really who wants to contribute to an ABLE account can. All contributions must be post-tax dollars. So what is in the account and the distribution for those qualified disability expenses is tax-free and tax exempt, but what goes into there must be already post-tax dollars. Okay, a special needs trust contribute to an ABLE account up to the annual limit, which is currently at $20,000 per year. So some people have special needs trusts because they had those before ABLE accounts were open, and they have looked at everything that they're doing and decided they don't need a special needs trust anymore. You can move that over into an ABLE account as long as you don't move more than 20,000, of course, a year. And in a little bit, well, I can talk about it now, but you want to make sure, right? If you had a special needs trust and there was $19,000 in there and you wanted to move it over to your ABLE account, remember, you can only deposit 20,000. So you only have 1,000 left from that time to the end of the year to deposit. Okay. So deposits are different, remember, than what you're spending. Okay. So only 20,000 per year. If you have ABLE accounts now, typically on your page or whatever, your front page, it'll show you how much you've contributed. Okay. So you got to kind of be careful if you're moving a special needs trust. You may have to move it in more than one time. Also, 529 college savings accounts also can be rolled into the ABLE account. This was a change that happened a little while ago in 2018. Again, you got to watch the money that you're moving. Again, you got to keep that 20,000 in mind. And then some states offer a one-time rollover of one ABLE account into another state. I think most are offering this now, but it's typically only a one-time rollover. So you're not moving from Nebraska to Minnesota to Montana to Oregon. You can't be moving all the time. They do keep track of that. And most of the ABLE accounts now in the United States are under one accounting firm, which is called Ascensus. So they do have information when you're rolling over into more than one time. And typically the total aggregate varies, but it is typically for a lifetime $350,000 in an ABLE account. Okay. But again, you would have to be spending that down if you're receiving Social Security money. But there are people that have ABLE accounts that don't receive that federal means tester program. So
is that 350,000 different than what was the earlier number, the max you could put in there?
Okay, so good question, Matt. So remember, the total deposits in one ABLE account per year are 20,000. If the account holder is receiving SSI or SSDI or both, remember, you can't let the balance get to at $100,000. It's suspended. Okay. Those are two that you have to remember if your receipt or the Social Security one, you have to remember if you're receiving either one of those benefits. But you can have an ABLE account without receiving the financial benefits from Social Security, just that you have a disability. Okay. So that's the one where you think more about the $350,000. Does that make sense, Matt?
I'm trying to process it. It's not something I have to worry about right now, but I just remembered that 100,000.
Correct. So if the account holder is receiving any type of Social Security benefit, the $100,000 is the one you want to take a look at continuously. Yeah. If they are not receiving those monetary benefits, you can be looking at just the 20,000 and the 350,000 for a lifetime.
Okay.
The deposit is for everyone.
In my case, I think it's not SSI. Jessica's on that program after you turn 65.
Right. So she is receiving SSDI.
SSDI, okay.
Right, but under her circumstances, it's SSDI DAC. Trevor is right there too, and so is my son. That is either survivor benefits or retirement benefits.
What was that last initials you had? SSDI?
SSDI, the last three on that is DAC.
D. And what does that stand for?
Disability Adult Child.
Okay, I just couldn't remember that anymore. All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
so some of them would be receiving that, but it is still a Social Security benefit. So it would still count towards that $100,000.
Vicky, you have a question?
Okay. Who is it? I
Go
can't
ahead
find.
and ask the question, whoever has their hand up.
Yep.
So what would the 350,000, how, that wouldn't even apply to us then, would it?
No, it would
Okay,
not.
right.
Okay, who's got the phone? Who's got their raised hand?
They'll have
Nobody?
to,
You have to unmute probably.
yeah. Are you able to unmute your iPhone?
It's whoever this is.
I do have a question about that 100,000. So
Okay.
if an individual is receiving $100,000 of Social Security benefits, could you explain, do they have to, you said spend it down below that to be able to be eligible
Right.
for an ABLE account?
Not to be eligible for an ABLE account. Those aren't for eligibility. That is once you have an ABLE account. Okay. Eligibility is only that age requirement and being disabled according to Social Security.
Okay. And
So
so
an
what
example
was
of
this?
what that, yeah, an example of what that could be is, wasn't too long ago, I helped a family open an ABLE account for a 4-year-old child because she is disabled. She meets the disability qualifications for Social Security, but she does not receive a Social Security check from either SSI, SSDI, or SSDI DAC. Okay. So for her, okay, she can still only deposit, they can only deposit 20,000 per year. Okay. But they don't have to worry about that 100,000 cutoff mark. Okay. In a different case, okay, if you're receiving Social Security benefits and you have an ABLE account, you can't let your ABLE account balance go past $100,000. If it does, you have to spend it down. That spend down is what kind of happened before ABLE accounts existed. You couldn't have, if you were an individual, you couldn't have more than that $2,000. So you had to keep spending it. You couldn't save it. You couldn't do much with it. And sometimes people had to buy things that they didn't really want. This way, you have up to $100,000 in your account before Social Security will suspend those monetary benefits. Okay, and that was Keith, I think. Does that help, Keith?
Yeah, kind of
You
still
can
trying to
ask
wrap my head
again.
around that.
You can
Um,
you can keep asking me.
so you're saying that you're you can have up to $100,000 in an ABLE account before Social Security will stop cutting a monthly check. Is that correct?
Correct. They suspend it.
They suspend it. Okay, got it.
And if you get 30 days to go below that $100,000, and then after 30 days, they will reinstate yours. If you go past the 30 days, you will lose some of your Social Security benefits. So I'll make an example. So my son gets it. Let's say he had $120,000 in his ABLE account. Okay. And it's like, boom, I don't know. I wasn't paying any attention to this. And so Social Security, he stopped receiving his Social Security check. Okay. I'd have 30 days to spend down $20,000. If I didn't spend it down in 30 days, I would miss out. Aaron would be denied his Social Security check for that 1 month. If I didn't spend it down in 60 days, he would lose out on 60 days of a Social Security payment. Okay.
Okay, that makes sense. And
Okay.
then, so what is the 350,000 aggregate? What is that?
So that is most able accounts. You can only have $350,000 balance for a lifetime. Okay. So this would not apply to those who receive the monetary benefit of Social Security, but it could apply to someone with an able account who just met the disability qualifications. In other words, let's say, I can explain to you later on, but sometimes where I've seen this recently is for veterans. Once the age changed to 46, we have more veterans who qualify for an ABLE account, but they don't receive Social Security.
Okay, that makes sense. Yep.
Okay,
Okay, got it. Yep.
right.
One other question, and we don't have this now, but let's say at some point, parents, for example, or others are able to make contributions. But right now, of course, in North Dakota, we don't want to do that because they could claw that back, which isn't money that, the state provided or Social Security provided. But if that should pass at some point, would that hit the 350 somehow or other?
Nope, that wouldn't have anything to do with it because it's the Social Security payments.
Okay. Okay.
Vicky,
That's
Eli also has a question.
Yep, Eli, go ahead. You
Hi.
can, hi.
What is a special needs trust?
Okay, that is a trust that can be set up for someone who typically is disabled. To set that up, again, typically you'd have an attorney. And it used to be that that's kind of all we had. And so people could, there's different kinds of trusts, but typically a special need is what we call non-revocable. So you put money in there, unless it's a first party, third party, there's a whole bunch of things for special needs trusts. But basically what it would do would be to hold money for the benefit of someone who the trust is for or disabled, but only their benefit. So they are not the beneficiary of it legally. You have to have a trustee and trustors. They're a lot more complicated. What you spend them on is more complicated. And then the trust also has to pay taxes.
Okay.
So Eli, do you have a special needs trust too?
No, I have an SSDI.
Okay. Yep. So a special needs trust, before ABLE accounts came, that was really one way to protect money for someone. But now they have ABLE accounts. And in a little bit, I'll come and I will compare the two. Okay.
Okay,
Eli?
thank you.
Yep.
when that happened, Vicky, and you used monies that you got from Social Security or, into those special needs trusts, they couldn't claw that back then, could they, or could they?
I can't be really sure because there are different types of special needs trusts, whether you had a first party or third party, and they differ. So all I can say is it's possible they could, depending on what money was used to create that special needs trust.
Yeah, a lot of times the special needs trust are to transfer money from the parent or a relative, so it's not state money. Then I believe they can't claw it back because they didn't put it in. But my question was if you funneled money, like you say, before there was an ABLE account into a special needs trust, that might change that situation there where they could
Yeah,
claw
and
back.
even if it wasn't state money, there are some different rules for that, but that would be an attorney's question. So, if I was in a situation like that, I'd probably want to confer with an attorney. And more than likely, you had an attorney that opened up the special needs trust. Not always, but that would be the question on that. So, okay. Anybody else?
I had one more question I wrote down here. The 2,000 maximum assets that you can have versus 3,000. Did North Dakota change that from 2 to 3 on a
No,
monthly basis?
2,000 is for an individual and 3,000 is for a couple for social SSI.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. All right. Oh, I'm stuck. There we go. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about a gift of independence because, especially when these first open, but a gift of independence or something, to this effect, some states have their own, but this is one for all of them, is a new way to honor, celebrate, or reward a member of your family or coworker to deposit some money into an ABLE account. This way, a gift of independence would go directly into their ABLE account. And someone else purchased this gift. So they already paid taxes on the dollar that they're purchasing with. So it is, post-tax dollars. So it qualifies for that. These came into effect a lot of times, high school graduation or, confirmations or, any type of celebratory thing. You can purchase these gifts of independence, and I put the website online, and that way you can, donate some dollars into an ABLE account. So this is a big thing, and the qualified disability expenses, this is probably what I get a lot of calls on once they get them open, but under the definition for qualified disability expenses on an ABLE account, this is how it reads. A qualified disability expense, or a QDES, are expenses that relate to the designated beneficiary's blindness or disability and are for the benefit of that designated beneficiary in maintaining or improving his or her health, independence, or quality of life. And then that explanation goes on further in the final rules for ABLE account. The term qualified disability expenses should be broadly construed to permit the inclusion of basic living expenses and should not be limited to expenses for items for which there is a medical necessity or which provide no benefit to others in addition to the benefit to the eligible individual. So that's a lot of words. And so my next slide is going to give you some ideas, okay, of example of disability expenses. So in education, it can pay for tuition, it can pay for meal plans, and people do ask me, how about high school meal plans? Yes, it can paid for that. Books, tutors, when you're thinking about that housing, like I talked before, it has to happen during that same month. But it can pay for rent, it can pay for mortgage, it can pay for property taxes, it can be paid for homeowners, alliance, whatever they need, HOAs. Then we think about health and wellness. So the first one that comes to mind that I get a call on a lot is those unreimbursed medical expenses. So that one I get a ton of calls on, but I will give my own example in this case. So my son sees physicians at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. Medicaid is not paying for the travel expense, but people have donated into my son's ABLE account, which means I can use ABLE accounts to pay for those travel expenses or those hotel expenses. Okay, so those are health and wellness things, but that's an example of if you're on Medicaid, that something Medicaid would be paying for, that you can also pay for out of an ABLE account. Other ones are like dietary supplements, prescriptions that aren't covered on your insurance, gym memberships, used one to pay for the YMCA for a year to go for a child. So they can be used for a lot of things. They can be used for basic living expenses as well. But what I will tell you when it comes to basic living expenses and what you pay for out of an ABLE account, again, if that account owner, which is the person who's disabled, is receiving Social Security, especially SSI, you do want to make sure that they're using their SSI money for those basic expenses and not rolling it all over into an ABLE account, because you will get audited And that, you know, that's going to question whether you're using that SSI money that that person is receiving for the basic expenses of why you're receiving it. In other words, if you're receiving SSI and you have an SSI, you have an account, you should be using that money for some food, okay, or clothing, or hygiene products, which you need. Still be using that money. You can use for funeral and burial expenses. So I get a lot of questions about this, about the Medicaid clawback. So you can designate in the ABLE account to be used for funeral and burial expenses, and you would get to use that money before Medicaid could claw back the money, okay? So you can use it for the casket, the ceremony, the burial site, a burial stone. And typically what happens is a next of kin in the family, or there might be another designated person for this. They would have access to the knowledge of that ABLE account. And then you call the state where you have the ABLE account. You plan for the funeral. You get how much that will cost. The funeral home would send it to whichever state the ABLE account is being held in, and they would take money out of that account and pay the funeral home or the casket company, whichever it may be, okay? All ABLE accounts have a form that you can sign that says that the person owning that ABLE account would like to use that ABLE account if there is any money left over for a funeral. If they use that funeral and there's still some money left over in that ABLE account, Medicaid can claw it back in the state of North Dakota. It could be used for transportation, if you want to fly somewhere, a bus pass, an Uber, a car payment, any of those types of things. So we do have to think as the expenses as being very broad. Beth, you have a question?
Yeah, back on what you were talking about, burial and funeral expenses. So where do you put that in a will or somewhere that, and you said that the funeral home would send the bill to the bank and they would pay it? Who's they, and where do you indicate that?
Okay, so I'll give you an example just under my ABLE account. Is that okay, Beth?
Yeah.
Aaron's. So I called ABLE Now, which is where we have his account, and I said, do you have a form that can be used for burial accounts for Aaron's ABLE account? Because I signed him up. I'm guardian. That's how I signed him up, as I'm guardian. And yes, they have a form, and on there, it's just a basic form that says money's left over at the death of the account holder, which is Aaron, can be used for funeral expenses, okay? So if Aaron passed away now, I don't really have access to that money in the ABLE account, okay? So what happens then is you can go to the funeral home, whatever, you know, you get the receipts or the cost or whatever, and then the funeral home can send that. So right now they would send it to Virginia under the PNC Bank because that's what holds his ABLE account. I would have access to the account number and everything, so they would know what that is. You have to send, of course, a death certificate as well. And then they would directly, that PNC would directly pay, let's say if I had it in here in Parkway, they would pay Parkway for it, okay? I would not have access to his account. The only way someone can transfer an ABLE account if that account holder died is to an immediate family member that also met the qualifications for an ABLE account. Okay.
Now, just a question there, Vicki, is otherwise, if you don't use that money, for example, for a funeral or designated for that, if there are funds left over, North Dakota could claw it back.
They can. So the first time that this happened to me, ABLE accounts didn't, at that time where they held their ABLE account, did not have a form for it. But we were still able to use the money that was in that funeral, the cost of that funeral out of that ABLE account. And of course, we used it all before Medicaid clawed it back. but if there is some left in it, Medicaid can claw it back. So since people can have ABLE accounts in many different states, you know, my suggestion is to call them to see if they have a form for it. And if they don't have a form for it, you can maybe possibly just get your own form. Okay. You know, I've known some people that have used health directives to direct this as well. Okay. Costs nothing to get a healthcare directive. Okay. Some use power of attorney to get this. Okay. That would probably be ideally the best because they're over financial. So you can have a power of attorney, which typically does not cost you anything in North Dakota.
Can a guardian?
A guardian can, but you would have to have it written somewhere unless you're making that decision and that's part of your guardianship.
Yeah, if you have guardianship for finances, that
Yep.
should cover it.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Eli has a question too, Vicky.
Yep. Go ahead, Eli.
Okay, so you said it was from all of this is for an SSI. Does the same thing go for an SSDI?
Yes.
Okay, I was just wondering that. Go ahead.
Can I
Anybody?
can I
Go
ask
ahead.
I have
along with that?
Yes.
Do you need to keep receipts for everything when you're using money out of the ABLE account, like you would for a rep payee?
Okay. Yes, I suggest that you do. Again, the IRS is the lead agency over these, so they can choose to audit you at any time. Most ABLE accounts have their own what they call expense tracker system. So you can just type it in. It's electronic banking, so you're just typing in what it's used for. And that way you don't have to keep those paper receipts. But yes, you must keep track only for your benefit, because if you get audited and you can't prove it, well, there is penalties.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm very familiar with 529 like college tuition plans.
Uh-huh.
And they typically the way they're set up, and I've got a couple myself where I'm the owner of the account, but I designate my child as the beneficiary of it. So as
Yes.
long as the funds are used to pay college, expenses, that money is tax deferred as it's, growing in that account. How
Correct.
does that work? How does that work for these particular accounts? If we were to set one up, would I be the account holder, but the beneficiary would be the,
No. So when you sign up for ABLE accounts, there's options of how you can do it. So the account owner can sign up themselves, the person with a disability can sign themselves, or it can be a guardian who has that power to sign up for that, or it can be a rep payee, okay, to sign up for that. And what happens is the person who qualified for the ABLE account, the person with a disability, is actually the owner, is the
okay.
owner and the beneficiary.
Okay. So let's say the person does not have the capacity to make financial decisions, how do things get paid, for example, rent,
Okay.
the
So
person doesn't have the ability to actually himself make the rent payments or deal with a landlord, but the guardian would have to intervene on behalf of the disabled person to make those payments happen. So how does that actually happen? Would the landlord
that
bill
Well, that way,
the
when you
account?
sign up for that ABLE account, you would sign up for that as the guardian of the account holder. That is a question you get asked on the first part of applying for an ABLE account, on every ABLE account. So
Okay.
as a guardian, you would still get to make all those decisions, but you actually don't own the account. So like on a special, if it was like Aaron, that is Aaron's account, my son's account. I signed him up. I have full guardianship. So I'm the one who makes those decisions for him. unlike a special needs trust where Aaron wouldn't be any part of that. He would just benefit from the dollars that a trustee said he could have out of that account. Okay. Okay, anybody else? Eli, you got another question?
I am sorry. This is Aaliyah, his sister.
Oh, yes.
I just had a question about the funeral and burial expenses. So with the Medicare pullback, after someone has died, how does that work? So if you put the money into the ABLE account, but then say Eli were to pass away and I was, and myself or my daughter or something, we were going to plan his funeral. Is there the ability to use that money towards the funeral and burial expenses? Or
there is, but you would have to have some type of legal power or health directed power to do that. So if Eli had a rep payee, okay,
Yep.
the rep payee can do that because they have that ability to do that. Okay.
Oh.
The rep payee would not receive the money and then go pay the funeral home. The
Right.
funeral home would send that into the account and the account would pay that with the legal documents of a death certificate and everything else.
Okay.
So it is a little complicated and, there's definitely things that you got to keep in mind for that. And people don't really think about that. Like the first one that I helped somebody with is like, they died unexpectedly. So we're just like, wow. And this person actually only had the ABLE account for less than a year. And so, we had to go through a lot of processes and call where that ABLE account was and figure out some legal things first. So the reason I put this in there is basically just to know that this can happen, but there has to be some type of legality over it, okay, before Medicaid can come in. One of the things, like I said, if a person who is disabled, who opened their own account under themselves and suddenly passed away without some legal person in there being able to do anything, you wouldn't be able to have access to that money, okay? So in some of those cases, I say, well, if you're disabled and you have this and you have no other legal people, that can access this, you might want to get a power of attorney. Again, because it's less costly, right? There's no costs.
Can I jump in really quick? Power of attorney does expire upon death, so you would need to have something else in place.
Well, that would be durable power of attorney, correct? There are different types of power of attorney.
No, I believe all types of power of attorney expire upon death.
Okay.
Of the individual.
So I am not an attorney, so I don't know. But I know that we did use power of attorney in the case of that, and it was fine. But again, it wasn't me doing it. So it's something that you should check about in your own situation, okay? Because remember, you're talking about money. So it has to have somebody who has legal access over that money, okay? And again, I'm not an attorney, so if you're thinking this, that would be you, which I'd be telling you is to go find out in your situation.
I think, Vicki, you know more than probably any attorney in North Dakota.
No, I don't. And I don't give legal advice. And I'm glad that Carolyn spoke up because there's more than one type of attorney, but I do not know. I mean, I was a power of attorney over my father, but yes, it ended when he passed away. I could only make legal decisions while he was here. So,
I understand what you're saying. It might be a good idea to get there are a lot of attorneys practicing in this stuff who really are not experts on it.
Yeah,
and,
but
that's a challenge in itself.
Right. So it is upon the person who either signed up for as a guardian or a rep payee or the person with the disability expense to ask those questions to someone who has legal authority to tell you that. I do not. What I do have is, I'd say, if you're thinking about this, to find out the information. Because it may look different for different families. I don't know.
I understand what you're saying, Vicki. Don't get me wrong. I'm just, it is a big need in North Dakota to try and find expertise on some of these issues. I don't know if that's somehow, really all these issues are extremely important to people with disabilities, but there's not really a lot of help from the state, or I guess, I don't know, P&A's attorneys would probably figure it out, but they have priorities where they can spend their money on and have resources. But yeah, there are a lot of things like this, or even like navigating, getting approval for out of state medically necessary procedures is just incredible.
Yeah, so my suggestion was, if you're holding guardianship, you had more than likely an attorney for guardianship. So that would be probably somebody you could ask. If you have an attorney family, it might be somebody you can ask. But for me to give you a definite answer of what that is, no. But I do suggest that you have, the first thing I suggest is, if you've already opened your ABLE account, to talk to the state where you hold that ABLE account to see if they actually have a form, because that would get you started anyway. Okay, so we're going to move on to how to fund an ABLE account. So we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but it can be contributions from family and friends. It can be contributions from employers, including a direct deposit paycheck into your ABLE account. Remember, that's after the taxes have been taken out. Again, contributions from a special needs trust or a pool trust can be rolled over into an ABLE account. SSI dollars or SSDI lump sum payments. So any of those unused portions. So people will call me and they say, oh, well, we have the ABLE account, Vicki, and now we finally got our SSI money, but it took them this long, and so I have $4,000 check coming to me. Okay, that whole lump sum can go into an ABLE account as long as you're keeping track of that $20,000. Any other earnings from an account owner, as long as it's post-tax dollars. A rollover, if you roll over a 529 account, you can roll those over. And then if by chance in that circumstance, a rollover from somebody else's ABLE account, typically I've never worked with anybody like this, but it is on their rules of who can contribute, because it would have to be a family member, and that has to be an immediate family member. So if we'll just say two people in a family had an ABLE account, two persons who were disabled, both had their ABLE accounts, one person passed away, that's another way you can transfer those funds before the Medicaid clawback. You do have to produce everything I say, like produce, the death certificate. You have to talk to whoever you had that ABLE account to. You also have to remember that you can only deposit $20,000. So if there was a lot of money in one person's ABLE account, able to roll it into another established ABLE account in that immediate family, it still has to be with all the rules of that $20,000 deposit. I talk a lot about that $20,000 deposit because I get a lot of calls. Hey, Vicki, yep, we have an ABLE account. My son just inherited $40,000. It's hard. It's, they're going to have money that counts as income unless they'd have like a special needs trust as well, or they had made arrangements early on and said, okay, he has his 40,000, but he's only going to get 5,000 a year or something like that. And all that would have to be set up, of course, with an attorney. And so again, these can happen. I have never dealt with this situation, but again, it's just something to keep in mind. You know, keeping an eye on that $20,000 and inheritance. I get a lot of calls on that. There's not much, there's no way around it that some of that money ain't going to count towards Medicaid or another program that you're on, like SSI. So that's always good to be knowing that within your family group or whoever, you know, I call them my caregiving group, that they know about these things. Okay. It's very important to do that.
So Vicky, I know you've gone through this, but for example, we get the SSDI, DAC funds each month. There's a little left over, you know, move it over into the ABLE account. But you don't have to worry about that as long as it doesn't go over 20,000 a month.
20,000 a year.
A year, okay. A year, okay.
Yep.
So you can do, you know, little contributions, $500 or $1,000, depending on where you're at. What makes it complicated, for example, if you have medical expenses and you get reimbursed, and those might not come back sometimes, you know, for a month or more, depending on, you know, how that's set up. We're running into some of that with our Mayo stuff now. And so you've got some money in there that you kind of need, because you don't want to get over the $2,000 limit, but you could put it into the ABLE account, but you'd have to keep track of it when you take it back out to reimburse yourself.
Right. But there are different rules for SSI money compared to SSDI money. So.
But basically, what you're saying is no more of either of compared
Yeah,
to
yeah. Each individual will look at it differently because each individual has different things. But the 20,000 per year is for every ABLE account in the United States. Okay. Except, which again, I'll get to a slide that shows you where you possibly can save a little more. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So Eli, or some of you had the questions about ABLE accounts or special needs trusts or both. Sometimes you might think that you need both, okay? Because there are certain things that you have to think about. So on an ABLE account, the person has more control, more choices. It certainly costs less money to set up. They have easy access because a lot of it's like online banking. You have debit cards. Most ABLE accounts in the United States, you can also take a portion of investing it if you like. It has those tax-free benefits. The owner is the beneficiary, but they do have the limits on deposits and they do have the Medicaid clawback. So for a special needs trusts, one thing you can do is roll in assets. So an example, my son inherited mineral rights. You can't put mineral rights for money in an ABLE account. So they are listed in his special needs trust. Also, he has farmland. Land cannot be held in an ABLE account, so he needs that special needs trust to protect it. Special needs trust, there's an unlimited amount of money that can be in there. But it can also be invested, but it can have other beneficiaries in a special needs trust. It can easily protect inheritance if you inherited a lot of money or you think that you might. It definitely costs more, only one, to set up a special needs trust. Most will recommend that you go through an attorney. But again, that's your choice. But there's a lot of jargon in a special needs trust that has to be very specific. Some special needs trusts do have a Medicaid payback, but not all of them. And then, of course, it's taxable. So all special needs trusts, the trust itself or the grantor of that trust would pay taxes on it.
Yeah, that's one thing I found out when I had a special needs trust. It's not the any gain. You're not just going to leave the money sit there and not do anything. So any gain you have in there is actually taxed, I think, at the highest rate, like 30 some percent. So
Correct.
it's
It's very
like,
high.
pardon?
It's very high. Now, the special needs trust itself can pay the taxes. So it wouldn't have to be the grantor. It could be some of the money that's already in the special needs trust. But again, that is something you would have to, figure out on your own because that's like accounting advice or legal advice. And yeah, I just don't do that. But I put this slide in there because it compares the both because that's why able accounts were pretty much, part of the reason of why they became bipartisan law is to make sure that people with disabilities could actually save some money just like any other person could. So,
Well, it protects the assets. What I was getting at is it's not like a good investment like a retirement plan where you're looking at maximizing your growth because it is such a higher tax rate.
yeah. Okay, so we have the able account options. So once you have an able account in that state, they have different options. The safest route is just like a regular saving or checking account. So again, it's very safe, but of course there's a low rate of a return on interest rate, but it's very easy to access, very less risk. Typically you're getting a debit card if you want to pay for all your expenses out there, but has the least opportunity for growth. And other ones have investing that able option, or sometimes you can do both. In a lot of states, you can do both. So you can have some growth in an able account, a higher return. Of course, there is a greater risk of loss. And typically those investments are in stocks and bonds. But I don't take really questions on investment because I'm not an investment professional. So if you open an able account or already have an able account, you certainly can talk to other people about investment options. And of course, the Bank of North Dakota offers information on that as well. So here's where I was talking that you possibly can save a little bit more money than the $20,000. There was later on an amendment into the ABLE accounts, which is called the Able to Work Act. So if you are a person who works and has a disability, you have this opportunity to grow a little bit more in your financial savings money in an ABLE account. So currently for 2026, if you have an ABLE account, you can deposit more than the $20,000 per year. This provision allows certain able account owners who work and earn income to contribute above that $20,000. So to be eligible to do this, the able account owner or their employer cannot contribute to any retirement account like 401ks or any of those type of accounts, and that the worker's income is at least $15,650 per year. So that able account owner can contribute a combination of unearned and earned and unearned income above the limits. So that means a person who makes that $15,650 a year instead of $20,000 can contribute $36,650 a year. Okay. So this is important, again, to always remember for somebody who owns an ABLE account that is working as well, okay? So they can contribute more. I get a few questions on this, not too many. It's pretty explainable. If you are someone who is eligible for this, you need to contact the state or the bank or the financial institution of where that ABLE account is held, and they will give you paperwork for this. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. There's Also enable and student earned income exclusion enable accounts. So the Social Security, of course, encourages students to work. The student earned income exclusion is a work support that helps those recipients of SSI who work and attend school regularly. They have the right to keep more of their SSI earnings while continuing their Medicaid eligibility. So saving extra earnings in SSI Enable account can allow those students to save for their future. So how this works is the SEII, which again is that student earned income exclusion, will allow, again, this is SSI recipients, this is not SSDI recipients, who are under the age of 22 and regularly attend school and earn up to $2,410 per month, okay, which is up to $97.30 a year. They can earn up that much without reducing their SSI monthly payment, okay? So in 2026, those amount may be adjusted. I shouldn't put that in there. They were adjusted. I just hadn't changed I thought I updated my whole PowerPoint, but I didn't. Those are the numbers for 2026. So when does this apply? Again, I've had this for some families whose students receive SSI, but they're going to college or they're going to, a tech school or something like that, but also working. This just allows them to save some more of their Social Security money. And the best place to save that, of course, is an ABLE account. And so that is why those two are connected. But if you feel that, somebody or yourself would qualify for this, you contact the Social Security office, your local one, and they have all the information that you need to start this one as well. But that is the reason those two are connected. Okay. So there are the long final regulations of ABLE accounts. That is that website there in case you ever want to take a look at them. You get questions, a lot of people call me, do you think this is for a qualified disability expense? Sometimes I'm able to find those with somebody that I know at the IRS, and they'll send me an email and then I can send that on to a person. But typically, I can't always say what would qualify and what wouldn't qualify. But do know if you had questions, that is something that you would want to check out with somebody. Again, there's no hotline on this, but at the end of this presentation, you'll have the National Resource Center for ABLE accounts, and they can probably help you as well. So some of the misuses, you cannot have more than one ABLE account to each qualified individual. If you actually do have more than one, and make sure that if you're rolling from one state to the other, that they're closed at the same time, because if they're not, you're going to get caught with this. It's actually happened to one of the families that I helped set up an ABLE account. They rolled it over and then they called me because they had received months later a letter from the IRS. So just make sure that you're looking at these, that you don't have more than one ABLE account. Otherwise, they're subject to that 10% penalty tax, okay? The other ones are if an expense is deemed during the IRS audit to not be a qualified expense, then they are also subject to that 10% penalty and taxation on those. So always remember, it is the IRS with this, so they can audit you at any time. Kind of like Social Security too. They don't have to, you get those when you least expect them or least want them, so. You should also, when you're opening an ABLE account, read the disclosure statements. Each one has, and it's in fine print at the bottom, a little click you can, but you should read them because they talk about the purpose, the eligibility requirements, the investment options, the qualified and non-qualified withdrawals. And again, in North Dakota, we don't, of course, have a local state benefit, but they talk about annual contributions. And of course, there are some fees. Most of them have fees just for their debit cards, but there can also be some undisclosed fees as well. And especially some of those fees when you're looking at investments, okay? Um, Information that you might need to open an ABLE account. Of course, if you have, if you're not receiving SSI or SSDI, make sure that you have that disability certificate that shows that you were disabled before the age of 46 by a licensed professional. You also might need banking account numbers, possible letters of guardianship. There are a few states now that are asking to send in those letters of guardianship. For a while, I never heard of any, but now they are. Social security number, or if you're a guardian or a payee, also need the social security numbers. Driver's license, if available, birth certificates. Sometimes the states ask for a copy of a recent utility payment or a rental agreement to prove your residency. All those can be asked, and they vary from state to state. And here is the ABLE National Resource Center. So that is the collaborative who supporters, and they are the ones that have a ton of information about ABLE accounts. They have webinars that you can go onto. They have archive webinars if you want to go back and look at them. It's also a really good website to look at when you're going to apply for an ABLE account, because on this website, there is a place where you can compare different states, like 3 states. Like if you were looking at Nebraska, Minnesota, or Montana now, you can put those 3 states in and then you can compare what their programs look like. And that website is right there too. That takes you directly to that comparison of states. You typically do not need a lot of money to open an ABLE account. And like I said, you get, most people, they get the debit card so they can use that those expensive. If you are the guardian, you'll probably receive that debit card in your name. Don't know if anybody...
A question on that. Are there consequences if, let's say we were to open up an ABLE account in the state of North Dakota, but later the disabled individual moves to another state? Is there any consequences with the ABLE account being from one state, but the individual now lives in another?
So yes and no. First, you wouldn't be able to open one in North Dakota under North Dakota Bank because there isn't any.
Okay.
But let's say the person opened one and lived in Minnesota. Okay, Minnesota rules, they're open to all residents of other states. Okay. And say that person moved to Nebraska. They can still keep it in Minnesota. You might, just because a lot of people call me and say, well, why doesn't North Dakota have them? Well, I kind of told you, they just have chosen, our state legislator gave them the power to open ABLE accounts in North Dakota, but they chose not to. Most states offer, not all, but a lot of states offer for any resident in the United States who meets the ABLE account qualifications, those determination eligibility. Okay. And so it's just like electronic banking, really. Okay. So my son receives SSDI DAC money, and I can link that account to his ABLE account in Virginia. Okay. And so if I want to move money back and forth, it's all done electronically. Now, of course, states do allow you to have checks as well. They can mail you checks, deposit slips, and everything else for that as well. But most people will do that either by electronic banking because that's how most of us bank nowadays. So let's say, so if you move to another state, doesn't necessarily mean you have to move your ABLE account. But let's say and I don't know this to be true, but let's just say for an example, he moved to Nebraska, but Nebraska offers an incentive just for those state residents. He might want to roll over that Minnesota ABLE account into Nebraska because he might receive a state benefit. There are states that offer state incentives to have an ABLE account in their state.
Oh, got it. Okay. So it's So it's a little more fluid. Like for example, like the 529 college plans, the student could be a resident of the, let's say, Illinois, but then go to school in Ohio, but then later have residency in another state. So it doesn't really matter. However, the plan could be in any particular state that may be more lucrative than having the plan in any other state. You kind of shop around like you would anything else.
Correct. What you
Okay.
do have to remember though is there are rules in a lot of these able accounts that only let you roll it over one time. Okay.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
so you always kind of want to keep track of that. I try to like let Denise know if you get our newsletter. I try to let her know if there's any news I hear of able accounts, but you can always go to that National Able Resource Center and look up those things as well. Like things do change, within able accounts, but currently, yeah. And like I said, there are some plans that only allow people in that state to open it. So if you are in Tennessee and you're not a resident of Tennessee, you can't open an able account there, But a lot of states have moved to opening it up to all residents, or they may have two able programs, one for state residents and one for non-state residents.
Okay. Yep, thank you.
Yep. Those who have able accounts that might be on this webinar, you should check. Able Now always does it, and I think they'll do it again this year, but a lot of them offer. So if you deposit so much money in your able account, that bank will match it. So last year we deposited 1,000 and we got 1,000. Beth.
Vicki, I was wondering if you would talk again about, you'd mentioned that I know there were 3 or 4 states that did not allow for clawback, but are you saying that that's changed now that North Dakota can claw back no matter what state you're in?
Okay, so the clawback, what happens, let me see if I can make a better example of it. So if Minnesota did not have a Medicaid clawback rule, okay, for their able accounts, you would be safe if you're a resident of Minnesota. But if you're a North Dakota resident who has an able account in Minnesota, you are disregarded for that. They look at your state policies. And our state policy says they can claw back for Medicaid.
So the same in the others, like California is one. Can North Dakota claw back out of California?
Yes.
So there really is no able account for us that cannot be clawed back.
Not until North Dakota decides they can't claw back from able accounts.
Okay, and then my other question, somebody had asked a question. So can they claw back everything in an able account or only things that have been paid in from public funds?
From public funds.
So if your family has put funds in there or an inheritance or something like that, they cannot claw that back.
Right. You'd have to keep track of that though.
And then what happens with those funds?
Oh,
that would be where you would have to talk to the bank that owns that able account, because there could be legal things there that I don't know about. Okay. It is a question you should talk about though.
Okay.
Oh, Vicki, did I just hear that right? I thought, for example, Virginia, if family or myself put money into that able account, if I keep track of it, North Dakota couldn't claw that back?
Well, they can.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Medicaid, yeah, but that isn't what I told Beth. So Medicaid can claw back for expenses that they paid out in. Medicaid can claw back for anything that they paid expenses in.
Okay, that's left over.
Correct.
Okay, you're talking about expenses.
Correct. That is the question I think Beth asked, unless I answered that wrong.
Well, I guess I mean, my family will have a lifetime of Medicaid has paid toward our family for various costs. So I guess what I'm wondering is about the actual funds that go into an ABLE account. If those funds came from family members, can Medicaid still take those out to pay for a lifetime of Medicaid payments? Or can
So
they?
to me, that would have to be a North Dakota state's attorney. That's who I would call on it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, because I don't think I can answer that because I'm not exactly sure. Just kind of going what has been done nationally, but that can look different in each state. So I would assume that the state's attorney's office should know that answer. Somebody up there should. Hey, how about anything else, people? I know we're probably over the time, but I'm more than happy to stay on a few more minutes if you had questions, or you certainly can email. There's my information, and there's our Family Voices directly. You can call them. So, I mean, some other things that I guess I've had come up that there might still be some people on that where this situation comes in play is when a group home is a rep payee and there's an ABLE account. I've had recently quite a few questions on that, and a lot of those are questions that I cannot answer. So you definitely need to be talking to those group home people. And if you're seeking out some advice, maybe the Bank of North Dakota is a good place to contact, or again, an attorney about how that plays out for those dollars and what those ABLE account dollars can be used for, because sometimes it is the group home who is the rep payee, and that is how that ABLE account was opened. So if you had a question like that, or if you were thinking about that tonight, I would defer you back to someone else's advice who's actually in those workings. I mean, what I will say is I don't see a lot of downsides to opening an ABLE account, except probably that Medicaid clawback. Those rules can change at any time. I don't think that ABLE accounts were set up to save a whole bunch of money, okay? They were used to save for certain things. Because, I mean, if you have $90,000 in an ABLE account, you're below that if you're on an SSI benefit, again, without having that legal advice, how much could they take? Like Beth said, I mean, is that going to happen? I don't think these accounts were originated for that. I mean, they started with someone who had Down syndrome who wanted to save money, and felt that they could. And, there was some disagreement with her caregivers of that time. So, I mean, these are kind of how these things started. The same things, if you think about supported decision making, it started the same way, but ABLE accounts, in my opinion, were one of the last bipartisan things passed through Congress. This did not have an issue going through Congress for people with disabilities to be able to save money. So I do also get some questions. So Social Security Administration is going to audit me. Do I have to disclose all the ABLE accounts? You do have to disclose the balance of that ABLE account, because remember, they are the one that hold the rule of $100,000. So they do have access to see that balance of when they ask for it. They can ask for post balances as well. Like, we want to see this, we want to see this. But they cannot take every single little expense that you paid out of it to Social Security, because that would be IRS looking at that, not Social Security. Social Security did not make the rule for qualified disability expenses in an ABLE account. The IRS did. Okay. But just like in a review of Medicaid, if you're reviewing Medicaid, they will typically ask you now, do you have an ABLE account? But it's just a question. Okay. Other people ask me tax questions. What's in there is non-taxable, but you will get tax statements in your ABLE account. Again, I don't answer tax questions because that's more individual, and maybe that person is paying taxes somewhere else. So, anything else?
Thank you very much, Vicki.
Yeah, anybody on the call is certainly more than happy to call Janine or whatever, and we'll try to help and guide you. I mean, most of the calls I get is just really the basic application for every state to open an ABLE account is usually pretty simple. Hi, Trevor. I see your mouth moving. I can't hear you. Can you unmute? Hi, Trevor.
The key thing I would tell you guys is always do it online. I don't like to do the paper checks or anything. I just move it back and forth because, like Ohio, they say they're not, if they lose the check, you're out of luck.
Correct.
So I just use the checking account and that's it.
Right. Trevor's probably the only one I helped that had checks, but I remember that. It was very difficult in Ohio, so for that.
Yeah, it's good. So I just use my checking account because I move it back and forth, it's just easier that way.
Yeah. Beth, do you have another?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you have a handful of states who you think have worked better.
In the very beginning I did because we had only a few, a lot of people that I talked to did use ABLE Now, which is out of Virginia. Again, because they were one of the first. Now so many states, Montana just opened theirs too. So I just had somebody apply there. I don't know how well it worked. I certainly have a lot in Nebraska. Again, and what I always say is like a lot of people in North Dakota, they want to keep their money close. So close states, even though it doesn't matter where that's at, but close states have always been more popular. Excuse me. There was some issues with guardianship in Minnesota, but I think those have been ironed out. So if you opened one as a guardian, it was a little more difficult. I've definitely had some in Ohio. Those were early on too. Ohio, I had really good investment options for some people. But again, investments, are more risky. Had really good luck with Maryland. More and more have chose to do Maryland just because some of the other states have been taking longer to get that account open. So ABLE Now has just switched over. So if you have an ABLE Now account right now, you don't have access to it because they are switching over to a census as well for the accounting and auditing. And that's the big group that took over a lot of states in their accounting part. I've had really no issues with any of the states anymore after, like I say, Minnesota. I do tell people, though, if they're signing up as guardianship, that they might want to call Minnesota and just make sure, if there's any special rules. The problem that Minnesota had with our guardianship papers is it expired in 5 years. We consider it a review, but actually the letters of guardianship say expired.
Vicki, I have a question. I've been putting some, small amounts into the ABLE account, and I haven't used any of it, but I was thinking I could just move it back into her checking account. Is that, like Trevor says, he actually writes checks from it? But if I just move it back into her checking account, that's all accounted for that way, whatever those funds are used for.
Yeah, you can move money back and forth.
Okay.
There's no rule against that.
Okay, because it's still accounted for what it's spent.
But just remember, when it goes back into a Social Security account, they're looking at the eligibility for Social Security. So if you're an SSI person, you can't be over $2,000 in there.
Right. But I mean, if you're down and you have you have a bill to pay, you can move money back into your checking account and then pay the bill.
Correct. Again, yeah, I think that's more of an individual question because, especially if you're receiving SSI, because if you're buying something out of that, it could be an asset and that would count as an asset part of that. But the question of moving money back and forth, you certainly can. A lot of people do pay their bills just with the debit card.
You can do.
Trevor, is that what you do?
Yeah, I do both, but I found with the debit card too, it takes longer on the debit card now.
Yep.
It takes longer on there. But if it's a big purchase over $2,000, then I'll use the debit card. But
Yep.
other than that, I use the checking account because
Yep.
it's faster.
Yep, you are right. Yep.
Yeah, because, and then you gotta, if you have the card too, there's a $5 fee, and then there's fraud. You have to watch out for fraud too on those. Like I had a business. Luckily, I didn't have money on there at the time. They tried to take $1,000 that I didn't have on there. They can do scams too.
Yeah, and I mean, you can also, so Matt, like if you paid one of her bills and you have the tracker system in her Able account, if you make notes and take a pic of what that is and upload that jig, you can also reimburse yourself to your own account out of an Able account.
Yeah, I may have to. I haven't done that, but I do all my checking and everything like in Quicken. And so I categorize everything, identify it, save all the receipts. I just more or less thought if right now our amount is pretty small, but I was hoping maybe at some point she might, if she moves into a medical home or something, might want to buy some furniture, things like that. And
yeah, so, like I said, you can definitely move the money back and forth. Just make sure you're still maintaining eligibility in those programs.
Yeah, now SSDI that's not quite as problematic, or is it?
Correct, it's not.
Okay, so I should be all right. But yeah, no, there's so many details here that's mind-boggling, and I worry about, who's going to do this down the road.
Yeah, I mean it's very good. I mean, I do another training called Caregiver Cafe, and you train. You kind of got to build people around you, that know things. So to build that is always a very good thing, to be part of that village. Which honestly, there's a lot of people like that in North Dakota that are always willing to help, in my opinion. So
He'll be back.
But yeah, I mean, I do think these are good accounts to have, and really once they're open and you got things set up, again, using them, looking at qualified disability expenses, what they could be, thinking about how does this relate to their disability, it's good. And yeah, you can reimburse yourself. So when I travel to Rochester, I pay for the hotel on my card, not a debit card. And I just go back into Able Now and track. I upload the receipt, put it down there what it was. I upload his appointment at Mayo, so they coincide. And so, yeah, you can, and then I just reimburse back into my account. So you definitely can do that. You just got to make sure that you're keeping track of that paperwork to show that you only reimbursed yourself from a medical expense out of the account holder, the account beneficiary, the person with the disability.
And
So
what's you call it a tracker?
yes, most able accounts have track expenses. They can track reimbursements within that able account that you have. So if you have able now, they have those things. I think Nebraska does too as well. A lot of them have that ability. You can track right up there. And so, otherwise you have a box of paper receipts, right? And a
Right.
lot of us who are guardians, we're already keeping track of everything, right? Because you got to fill out all that paperwork too.
Yeah.
So,
Banker's box.
yeah. But now with electronic, taking the pictures of things, and you can upload those right to those accounts and stuff. But yeah, so there are different ways to pay for those disability expenses, just depending on how you're doing it or how you choose you would like to do it. As long as it's a qualified disability expense and you can prove it, that's probably your biggest thing right there.
So this new system that the ones in Virginia are using, will that still be Virginia that has this tracker system, or will it be this new entity?
No, they'd just be the ones who are doing the accounting for it. There will still be a system in there. It's just going to look different. It'll probably have the Essentious logo over it. And honestly, they took over a lot of the accounting portion from a lot of these financial institutions that hold banking accounts. Like they have Maryland's, they have Minnesota's. I can't remember. I think Nebraska is in on there now too. They're just a big agency that is, I think of them as like Veridian, if you have Veridian.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Your account itself will stay the same. That's not going to change.
Okay. And they'd be the ones to call if you want to start doing this.
No, you still call the financial institution.
Oh, not
Essentious. No. They're going to give you the Essentious number as well. And the biggest reason you would call them now is if all of a sudden you look in your able account and they say, hey, they didn't move my money over there. But hopefully that's not going to happen to anybody.
Sure. Okay.
So there might be some needs to call them. Okay. But your able account is still going to be held in able now.
What's the name of that company?
Essentious. ASCENUS.
AS.
Yeah. And if you have an able now, you should have received emails on this.
I did. Yeah, I was just making some notes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey, I don't know who's left on. I'm sure some people have gone off, but
Yeah, several have jumped off. Any final questions?
late, so.
Well, thanks everybody for joining. Thanks, Vicki. You did a great job. I could listen to you all day.
No, you don't want to do that. But
all right,
yeah.
everyone. Thanks for joining.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. Thanks, Janine.
Yeah. See you, Beth.